Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Non-Strategic Planning Committee. I'd like to start with item 1, apologies for absence and notifications of substitute members.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Rebecca Breeze, Councillor Daniel Rainbird and Councillor Zoe Smith, and Councillor Sally Keeble is in attendance as a substitute for Councillor Zoe Smith. Welcome, Councillor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest in any of the items under consideration at this meeting? No.
Sorry, can I just check? Obviously, some of the Section 106 agreement benefits would accrue to my ward and yours. I assume that doesn't have to be declared.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct. Unless you feel you have a personal interest or personal financial interest in that, then you are absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, item 3, minutes. Do we confirm that the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 9th of October 2025 as a correct record? Yes. Yep. Okay. Okay, item 4, Chair's announcements. Members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on the meeting, subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure may address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussion on any item. Anybody who repeatedly disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave. All speakers will have 3 minutes in which to make their statement, except where Chair's discretion has been applied, and are asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer any questions the committee may have. This meeting is being webcast on the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please speak clearly and concisely into the microphone at all times. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by Democratic Services. Please ensure any devices are switched off or on silent mode. For the benefit of the public watching remotely, I will now introduce the top table, starting at my furthest right.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name's Sian Webb. I'm the Principal Lawyer of Planning and Highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Richard Woods, Democratic Services Officer for the Council.
I'm Councillor John East, Chair of the committee.
Simon Ellis, Head of Development Management.
Thank you, Chair. Oliver Billing, Senior Planning Officer.
And Eamon McDowell, I'm the Team Leader for the North Team Development Management.
Okay, and this is where we want to do the mention about the mandatory training, is it?
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, just to remind all councillors that we have mandatory planning committee training on Monday, the 3rd of November at 5 o'clock. That will be held at 1 Angel Square. If you are unable to attend, please let me know at the end of this meeting. That's that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we now move on to item 5, which is the proposed pre-committee site visits. For any items requiring a site visit that are due to be heard on the 6th of November meeting of the committee, such site visits will be held at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 4th of November. The details will be circulated by Democratic Services in due course. We now move on to item 6, land at Harleston Road and York Way, Northampton. I will now hand over to the case officer, Oliver Billing, to begin the presentation.
The other one, press on share, and then, yeah, if you want.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This is an outline application with all matters reserved aside for access for up to 100 new homes with 40% affordable housing, a new vehicular access to York Way, new pedestrian linkages, sustainable drainage measures, a visitor car park for Harleston Firs, new public open space, and landscape and biodiversity enhancements. The application site comprises a portion of land located to the northwest of Northampton Town Centre and immediately adjacent to the Northampton-related development area to the south. Immediately to the north and east is Harleston Firs woodland, with York Way to the south and Harleston Road and the roundabout that connects these roads with New Sandy Lane to the west. There are several informal paths across and around the site which provide access into Harleston Firs to the north and east. And this is the red line boundary for the application site and includes a portion of Harleston Firs at the eastern side of the site, which will be protected from any built development. This slide shows the illustrative master plan for the proposed development. The new access point is shown by the black and pink arrow, along with 2 independent pedestrian access points, one of which will link to a proposed signalised crossing across York Way. There are areas of open space to the west and east of the site, including the proposed water attenuation area, highlighted by the blue triangle, and a local area of play shown by the pink star. Access points into Harleston Firs are proposed, and these would be secured by condition. The proposed visitor car park is to the western end of the site. This is the proposed land use plan, which shows the area of residential development in yellow and areas of open space and green infrastructure in green. The existing woodland is also shown at the eastern side of the site in dark green. The proposed car park is highlighted by the yellow star. This is the proposed density plan. The application proposes a maximum density of 40 dwellings per hectare, which is considered appropriate and consistent with adjacent developments. This slide shows the height plan, which illustrates that most of the site will be developed for 2-storey development, with 2.5-storey housing proposed along the southern boundary and part of the eastern side of the site, as shown by the pink and yellow hatched areas. And as mentioned, the application proposes a new vehicular and pedestrian access off York Way, 2 other pedestrian accesses. One of these is a shared footway and cycleway, links to a proposed signalised toucan crossing across York Way. A new proposed 2-metre footway along the northern side of York Way and uncontrolled crossing point are also proposed. The application is for the residential development of a site that is both visually and physically contained predominantly by Harleston Firs and is adjacent to the existing urban area in a sustainable location. The site is located within the Green Wedge. However, officers considered that there would be no perceptible coalescence with the settlements within the Green Wedge to the north, whilst the physical and visual separation with the nearby settlements would be retained. Moreover, improved and increased public access into the Green Wedge would be facilitated as part of the proposal. The scheme is considered to provide a series of benefits, including policy-compliant 40% on-site affordable housing, improved connectivity and access across York Way and formalised permissive paths and public access to Harleston Firs, on-site public open space, delivery of a small visitor car park to serve Harleston Firs, and Section 106 developer contributions for the local area. Officers note that the application lies outside of any village confines, the Northampton-related development area, any sustainable urban extensions, and comprises development of a greenfield site within the designated open countryside, and therefore there is an in-principle policy conflict. Despite this, there are no technical reasons why the proposed development should be refused, and the impacts of the proposed development can be managed via conditions and through the Section 106 legal agreement. It is therefore considered that the material considerations and benefits of the application outweigh any policy conflict, and the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and the Section 106 legal agreement. And these further slides show various views of the application site and the current access points into Harleston Firs. I will just cycle through those now. There are the access points into Harleston Firs that they exist at the moment. Again, that's the existing access into the northeastern corner. And they're the views from within Harleston Firs towards the application site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I now invite questions from the committee to the officers. Any questions? Councillor Tarban.
One thing that jumped out at me was the car park. It's extremely close to residential houses. And I was just wondering, are there any measures in place to prevent access to that car park at unsociable hours?
So one of the conditions is for sort of crime prevention statement, and that will cover the management of the car park. We'd expect the provisions to be included within that and how that will be managed to be included as part of that as well.
Any further questions? Councillor Keeble.
It's my understanding it's quite a large application to come to this, to the non-strategic planning committee. I just wondered if you might set out the reasons for it coming here.
Through you, Chairman, it's within the threshold set out in the Constitution that the non-strategic committee deals with this. It's set out in the Constitution under the committee arrangements that this scale of application can be considered by the non-strategic committee. So it's perfectly within the order of
Yeah. Okay.
Through you, Chair. The threshold for referral to strategic planning committee is 200 dwellings. So obviously at 100, we are below that threshold. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any further questions from the committee? Okay.
Could I just
Yep,
Sorry,
sorry.
could I just ask about the concerns, obviously, about the impact on Harston Firs? I wonder if you could just respond to some of the issues that have been raised, for example, by the parish council to that. And you mentioned about enhancements of access. I wonder if you could be a bit clear about that. And for the image that you showed, the view from Harston Firs onto the site, do I take it that all the trees that are there will still be maintained there, that is just a view through from, as it will be after the housing development is put, but obviously the green area will be full of houses?
So in terms of the woodland along the north and the eastern part of the site, that will all be retained. Obviously, the woodland to the north is outside of the application site boundary. I'll just cycle through to the master plan, which shows that. So this area to the east is within the application site, and that will be retained as the woodland. There'll be then this buffer zone, which is part of the attenuation basin and open space, and then a buffer zone along the northern part as well. So that's how the firs will be protected. There is tree protection fencing condition as part of the recommendation, and also a mitigation strategy to enhance the parts of the firs that are within the red line site. In terms of access into the site, these are current desire points, desire paths into the firs at the moment, which are across the site. And one of the benefits of the scheme is to formalise those and link them into the site, and then link them into further into the development to the south.
Chair, that picture, was that taken from the east of the site looking in, or was it from the north? Do you know?
The photo sort of this area and then a bit further in this, well, they're taken from the Bridleway, so they were taken on site on Tuesday, looking from the Bridleway into the site.
Through?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Cartwright.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just conscious about adoption of the land, the green spaces. Do we know yet if the parish council will be able to do that?
again, through you, Chairman, the current mechanisms in our 106s is to include within that legal agreement provisions to offer it to the parish council in the first instance for adoption. Failing that, a private management company would be set up to cover it if the agreement isn't reached between the developer and the parish council for formal adoption.
Thank
But
you.
again, that's set out in the report in terms of the heads of terms.
One more. Okay, Councillor Keeble.
Chair, there's just one further point, which is it says a certain proportion for affordable housing. Now, I know that's a bit of a movable feast in terms of definition. I just wondered if you can give any range as to what's going to be considered there, because those look like they're going to have quite big gardens, some of those properties. What kind of, how affordable is affordable?
Yeah, again, the drawing that's before you is purely indicative, so it's, no, it's purely indicating how it may all be developed. The section 106 has set out in the report, and the responses from the strategic housing officers set out their requirements in terms of securing the affordable housing, and that would be tied up both in conditions and in respect of the 106. Clearly, when a reserved matters application comes in, we will have a full detailed layout which will address the provisions in terms of where the affordable units are, the types of units, etc., and details of design and appearance.
Chair, if I can just come back, that doesn't deal with the question of, I know it's a really difficult issue, how affordable is affordable, but obviously for a lot of people who might be looking for a new property, particularly if they're younger families, the affordability threshold is quite important. And I just wondered what attention will be given to ensuring that it's at the lower end of affordable rather than the higher end. And I'm sure, Chair, I'm sure you'd also have an interest in that as well, to make sure that people in challenging times can actually afford a new home.
I can only advise it will be led by the advice of our housing officers in terms of what's set out in the 106, and that would be policy compliant. That's as much as I can advise in terms of the monetary affordability of houses, etc. I appreciate the sentiment that you're putting forward, but clearly, if the applicants demonstrate that it's compliant with the policies and the provisions of the 106, then that's as far as we can take it. I mean, but it is being led by your own housing officers in terms of their response and input into the current application. So there's currently a policy requirement, and the applicants are demonstrating compliance with that policy, and we will be looking to pursue that under the reserve matters.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay. We'll now move on to the public speaking in the following order. Jenny Cross, a local resident. Jenny Cross? Yep. Yeah, just there, yep. If you press the button to switch it on, and you should get a red light.
I'll start.
Okay.
This application fundamentally underlines many clear objectives of the Harleston Neighbourhood Plan about preserving the character of Harleston Village and the recreational value of Harleston Firs. It seeks to overturn policy ENV3 of the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan Part 2, which importantly prevents coalescence of fringe villages with the urban conurbation. The neighbourhood plan states explicitly that development should be limited to high quality, small scale developments in particular circumstances, for example, conversion of existing buildings, not a high density new estate on virgin green land isolated from the rest of the parish. The green wedge isn't just about restraint, it is also to protect recreational amenity and the tranquil nature of Harleston Firs Nature Reserve, forest walks, and designated local wildlife site. The setting of these assets, together with those of the Bridleway and special landscape area, will be impacted by the proposed development, and their value as a recreational asset will be diminished. Clearly, breaching the York Road development limit and extending the influence of residential built form to the north of York Way and setting it immediately in the foreground of the southern edge of the plantation of Harleston Heath would encroach further upon the rural setting of Harleston villages. Given the imminent delivery of Dallington Zoo, 3,000 homes, further development or shortfall in land availability should be focused on brownfield sites. This proposal is speculative and not part of the local plan, a fact acknowledged by the applicants throughout their proposal. It is simply nibbling at the edges of our green wedge, the single most important policy designed to prevent coalescence and protect the distinctive character and quality of the rural settlement of Harleston. I urge you all to reject this application.
Thank you. At this point, are there any questions from the committee for the speaker? Okay, thank you very much. You may sit down again. Okay, I now ask Amanda Onyet, a local resident.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Onyet and I've lived on York Way in Harleston Manor for 8 years. I'm here today to speak as a local resident who loves this community and to object to this planning application. The land we're talking about is a small plot between York Way and Harleston Firs, but it's far more than just a patch of grass. This site sits right on the edge of Harleston Firs, a designated local wildlife site and a much loved local nature reserve. It's a place of tranquility and calm where people walk, cycle and breathe. For many of us, this woodland is a sanctuary, a space to step away from traffic, noise and stress. It's also home to a rich variety of wildlife, including birds, bats and other species that depend on this peaceful habitat. And crucially, this small green plot acts as a natural buffer between the road and the woodland. Once that buffer is gone, the character of Harleston Firs will change and we can't get it back. If this proposal goes ahead, houses will be built right up to the edge of the firs, removing that protective boundary. Over the past couple of years, a large section of the woodland has already been cut down to extend York Way for a 3,000 home development. That alone has caused flooding on footpaths and chipped away at the quiet natural feel of the area. York Way has gone from being a quiet road used mainly by residents to a busy route full of construction traffic. Adding another 100 homes here will only make things worse. More cars, more noise, more pressure on already stretched infrastructure. And with that increased traffic and activity comes a real threat to the tranquil atmosphere that makes Harleston Firs so special. When many of us bought our homes, we were told this land wouldn't be built on. We see this proposal come forward feels like a real betrayal of trust. And it's not just me. Over 200 letters of objection have been submitted by people in Harleston Manor who care deeply about protecting this space. And it's not as if housing isn't already being built. There are up to 15,000 new homes going up within a mile of this site. There is simply no good reason to build on this small but environmentally and socially valuable piece of land. We're not against new homes. We understand the need for growth, but that growth should be responsible, sustainable, and respectful of the community and the natural environment that's already here. This proposal does not meet that standard. I urge you to listen to the people who live here, to protect the tranquil character of Harleston Firs, to safeguard this local wildlife site, and to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you remain seated while you ask any questions, if there's any questions from the committee? No, okay, thank you very much. You may sit down again. I now ask Nigel Stock, a local resident, who's going to speak.
We are surprised and dismayed that building on this greenfield site is being proposed. The reasons to reject are numerous and clear, the broad brush of which is to protect the green wedge, which is a buffer between urban and rural, and thereby protect the integrity and nature of the firs, a local beauty spot rich in wildlife. The current setting in open countryside is an integral part of its character and appeal. The case officer's report does not sufficiently consider that this development will be in the rural parish of Harlestone, assuming boundaries stay as currently drawn. Instead, it makes comparisons with the connected Sue developments, which occupy a different parish. Harleston is a jewel in the county's crown. It consists of village properties of local stone, many of which are thatched and listed, set in a low-density farming area. This development will be dislocated from the rest of our parish, right on the parish boundary with no connection or consistency with the historic village, which is over a mile away. Furthermore, it conflicts blatantly with Harlestone's recently approved and adopted neighbourhood plan. The proposed density will be similar to the connected Sue developments. How is our village parish council supposed to manage the needs of up to 100 homes plonked on the parish fringe with no affinity with or proximity to existing homes in the parish? The neighbouring Sues are part of the Northampton-related development area. This application is not part of this plan and corrupts the NRDA design. The proposed car park is of particular concern. Is this a private car park for residents or a public car park for visitors? If the latter, then this seems to me to be a separate planning application, and if granted, should be for the landowner to monitor and maintain or for WNC to adopt. We see that the police consultee shares our concerns. Please remove the car park in favour of retaining green space in that portion of the site. Villager consultation has been close to nil. The developer's statement of community involvement is risible. Their leafleting was all to Sue residents, not one to the residents of the parish that this development will actually be in. In May this year, Reform UK won control of this council and has a majority on this committee, including chair and vice chair positions. Reform wants change. Its policy document, Our Contract with You, advocates for fast-track planning for development on brownfield sites. Brownfield sites, not greenfield sites, not sites specifically designated as green wedges to protect the rural from coalescence with the urban. I urge councillors to stand up for the countryside. We are awash with new builds this side of town. Protect what remains of this county's beauty and heritage and vote against this application, which would, if approved, cause damage to the best of this county and to our rural parish.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, thank you very much, Speaker. I now ask Sarah Stock on behalf of Harleston Parish Council.
Harleston Parish Council holds the objections we've already submitted. You should refuse this application because it's on a green wedge and because it will be detrimental to the two neighbouring communities and rural character of the area. However, the case officer has recommended you approve this application. It would have been good practice for the case officer to liaise with the council before writing the recommendation, so I offer you some items to consider. In December 2024, Barwood's invited Harleston Parish councillors to a presentation about the proposed development. We were given no details before the meeting and certainly no indication that this meeting would become the extent of community involvement. Neither Barwoods nor the case officer have engaged with the community since, and neither understand what the villagers might find acceptable should this land be developed. Barwoods said this was to be a village-style development, distinct from the urban area, lower density than the urban area, and picking up on design features from Harleston villages. They provided us with a site scheme and proposals to back this up. So if the committee is minded not to uphold green wedge policy and protect Lower Harleston from coalescence with the urban area, I would ask that the following meaningful conditions be applied. Detailed design must come back to the committee. We require that an architect's retention clause be implemented. Barwoods must engage with the community before submitting a detailed application. To ensure the development is obviously part of the parish it sits in, it must adhere to policy H1 of the Neighbourhood Development Plan and aspects of the Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan. Local sandstone should feature heavily throughout the development. The proposal must also satisfy policies H6 and H11 of the Harleston Neighbourhood Development Plan. It must be treated architecturally as though directly adjacent to the village. Buildings must be limited to 2 stories and an AOD ridgeline height limit set so that no sneaky 2.5-storey buildings are included. The housing density must be low and should not exceed 60 homes in totals. This should include affordable homes and 20% single-storey homes for the older population of the village. Revised parameters must be included with larger buffer areas. Remove the public car park provision or mandate that the developer is legally obliged to maintain it in perpetuity with a sinking fund and step-in rights for West Northants Council to fix any problems. It will need 24-hour CCTV coverage. Harleston Parish Council will not take on responsibility for it. Given the development's beautiful setting, we believe it's worth holding the developer to a higher standard, creating homes that the new West Northants Council leadership can be proud to say that it approved.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? No. Thank you very much. I now call on Gary Hallman, agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. You have a very comprehensive report in front of you, so I just want to emphasise a few key points, if I may. This is, as you've heard, a sustainably located site on the edge of the built-up area, close to existing local facilities and accessible by a range of different transport modes. It's currently farmed, but is separate from the remainder of the holding and is now an isolated parcel of land left over as a result of building York Way and the housing to the south. Harleston Firs woodland acts as a very strong feature in the landscape, separating this land from the open countryside and, as we've heard, by over a mile from the nearest villages. It is well suited to the modest scale of housing which is proposed, and that will help meet Council's local needs, including a policy-compliant 40% affordable. Importantly, a scheme of this size can be delivered quickly. The site is immediately available, there are no technical constraints, it has ease of access, and new homes can be available with a minimum of delay. There are no technical objectives. Although only in outline, we have worked hard with officers, listened to feedback and modified the proposals during the determination period. So now the application makes provision for the car park, of which visitors to the Firs will be able to utilise. It also includes, importantly, new formal surface routes across the land which will provide direct connections for all users, pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders into the Firs. There are existing desire lines across the site, which is private, and this shows that the local community will find safe, permanent public rights of way a key benefit for the future. In addition to these benefits I've already described, the scheme will deliver a high level of biodiversity net gain, management of the woodland in the eastern part of the site for nature, a controlled pedestrian crossing of York Way, making crossing this road safer for those communities that live on the opposite side of it to access Harleston Firs, extensive areas of new open space, almost half the site will be retained as green space open to the wider community, and a high quality development of modern energy efficient new homes at a density comparable to the surrounding area. From a policy perspective, your officers have concluded, and we agree, that there is no conflict with the Council's Green Wedge policy. This is a sustainable site located on the edge of Northampton, and its development will represent valuable new investment to benefit the town in terms of jobs and spending power. Members, this application has been rigorously tested by our officers. It delivers a wide range of benefits, and we urge you to agree with their recommendation and to grant permission for this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious about the car park. Visitors to the Firs can't park on that piece of grass now and don't. So why is there a visitor car park for the Firs included, please?
There is a car park policy in the neighbourhood plan which encourages provision and a solution for the parking which occurs on surrounding streets. That's one of the aspects of the neighbourhood plan. And so our suggestion was, as a response to what's in the neighbourhood plan, encouraging at least some contribution towards the pressure on parking locally. We originally had a sort of a community building on that part of the site. There was a reaction against that locally. And so during the determination period of the application, we modified the application, took away the community building and provided an enlarged car park on the site that would have occupied. So the hope is that that will make some contribution to those people that want to visit the site and access the Firs rather than walking from the surrounding area.
Thank you.
Councillor McMurtry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the flood risks, because seeing the consultation here, they're saying that it's not satisfactory to demonstrate the proposed surface water drainage scheme will adequately manage the flood risk. So I'm just wondering what you've done to address that, because that is of a great concern for me in the area.
No, I understand that. So it is in flood zone 1, the site, which is the lowest risk of flooding on that basis. I think the comments that you've referred to there, Councillor, actually relate to the initial comments from the company or the consultee. There was then further information provided to them during the determination period, and then a further reconsultation reply was received, and that resolved all the issues that had been raised on the first occasion. So I think I'm fair in saying, and the officer can perhaps confirm this, that the issues to do with flood risk have been addressed, and there is now no technical issue or concern, subject to, again, the conditions that are recommended.
Can we confirm this? Because I can't see anything in the documents, that's all.
Yeah, so in the officer's report, it lists 2 sets of comments from the lead local flood authority. The first one being their objection, which is where they requested the additional information. And then the second one was on a reconsultation when they submitted that information. And that's led to the inclusion of their recommended conditions for surface water drainage details. They then did further comment on the amendments to the scheme, but there was no further real issues to pick up on from the flooding point of view.
Any further? Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. You mentioned that the design of the housing would be consistent with the area. Now, the parish council wanted the design of the housing consistent with the area, with the village. But the design of the housing in the village is very particular because it's stone and it's high spec. Well, it's old, obviously, historic. But the design of the houses most closest to this new development would be very different because they're modern, more sort of standard modern housing. So what exactly were you referring to when you said it would be consistent with the area? It would be consistent with the village, or it would be consistent with the new housing that exists on the other side of York Road?
So my comment about consistent was really in the context of density rather than design of the housing. So I think what I was saying was that the density of the housing on this site is proposed is consistent with the density of the surrounding area, the immediately surrounding area. I hadn't really gone on to talk about design, but I'm happy to respond to your point, which is that I think we have set out in the design and access statement, which accompanies the application, prepared by an architect, a very particular suggested approach to the design of the scheme and to an extent to the design of the houses, although we haven't gone into a lot of detail on that because of the outline nature of the application. So the master plan, for example, shows a certain type of suggested layout. I think it would be fair to say, although it's for discussion at the reserved matter stage, that I would expect the scheme to respond to more of its immediate surroundings than the village, which is some distance away, because there is no visual connection with that village. So it seems to me that if you're an architect looking at a house design in this area, you would have regard to what is within the proximity of the site, perhaps more than Harpole village itself.
Thanks for that. I did understand that you talked about design because density is a slightly different matter. So in terms of design, it would be very useful to have clarity about that, because the village presumably asked, because I mean, I take the point that they're separate. I know this area reasonably well from having walked around it. But obviously the design of the village is quite different, and the village was quite clear about what they wanted, which would be very different from the type of housing that's on the other side of the road. The reason why I asked, Chair, is because it would have a big impact on the affordability of the scheme, in that if you have an expensive design, then obviously it's very hard to make those houses affordable. And that's really why I was asking for clarification, so that we know the type of housing that we're voting for or not voting for, and also the type of, because we're giving delegated authority to the officers to pursue this, we are very clear about what the parameters of this are. So if you could just give some idea about, and I'm sorry if I've missed reading a bit of a document or something, but if you could just be clear about the type of housing that we're talking about.
Well, I think to be clear, we're not talking about any type of housing as such, because it's an outline application with a number of houses, a maximum number of houses proposed. And then the information which was submitted, which is extensive, is illustrative to show the quality of the scheme. Now, I think you can design high quality, energy efficient, sustainable houses without them necessarily being very expensive, but it's about placemaking, which is bringing the green spaces into the site, the road hierarchy, the way the buildings are positioned, which is what I think is what I would invite you to have in mind when considering an outline application and the principle of the development of this site. The actual architectural detailing and the design of the houses and what they will look like is something which will need to be the subject of much further detailed discussion with officers and the local community if they wish to be involved down the line. To go to your point about affordability, as the officer said before, that will be in line with the council's policies in terms of what the housing officers want. Their starting point for this, which is in your local plan, is that 2/3 of the affordable housing, 2/3 of the component of affordable housing here would be rental rather than purchased. And that again would provide the ability for affordable rented properties to be available to the local community. So their starting point is 2/3 is rental homes and 1/3 of the affordable component would be housing for sale. And that is my understanding of the starting point for negotiations and discussions with the housing department.
Do you mind if I just ask a further point, which perhaps the officer might also be able to clarify? It says here that the following planning obligations, 40% affordable housing provision. And then am I to take it that 2/3 of that would be for rent?
That's the basis of your policy at the moment. So
Yeah, okay.
40% affordable, of which 2/3
would be
starting point would be the
affordable
rental
for
sector.
rent.
Indeed.
Not social rent.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Just to address this point around outline versus reserve matters, if this application receives outline planning permission today, we can ask officers to bring back any subsequent reserve matters application to this committee. So the detailed designs will be can come through this committee in the same way as the outline application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Would. Yes.
Any further questions from the committee? No. Okay, thank you very much, Speaker. Okay, at this point, I just want to ask the officers if there's any points they wish to come back on.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We now move to the committee to debate this application. So, does anyone wish to make a start on the debate? Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we've already heard that as things stand on this outline, with what's been proposed, that I think that something needs to definitely go through the local parish council, because if they're not going to adopt the green spaces, it makes it extremely difficult for people buying houses to also buy an obligation to a management company. I'm very anti that. We just got rid of leasehold. I'm very keen to see that we don't backdoor a leasehold agreement into this. And I know that may mean changes to the proposal, but this is outline just to say if they can build or not. I would definitely want to see what the properties look like to see if they were acceptable moving forward. Can we reserve that straight away, or do we?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. If at a later point the committee is determining an application for reserve matters, if the committee is not happy with the reserve matters, i.e. the detailed design, it can refuse the reserve matters. But that's a point for later on. This is solely the outline permission. So this is an outline application for obviously 100 homes. If the committee is not happy with the outline, well, the detailed designs at a later point, it can reject those designs. This is solely for the outline, the principle of development for 100 homes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councillor Frost.
Thank you. Similarly, if the committee was so minded, we could, of course, defer till we get the sort of information that Councillor Cartwright has asked for. That's correct, isn't it?
Yep.
Me? Yes. It's your decision what you want to do with the application, but I would advise that the 106 and the heads of terms as set out in the report are consistent with previous decisions in 106s and the council has agreed in previous planning permissions. So I don't see the reason deferring it to revisit this issue of whether or not the parish may or may not adopt the open space would be a good reason for deferring a decision on the application. Equally, I don't think it's a good reason for refusing the application because it is the standard practice that we have adopted and it has worked. I understand the concerns that the Councillor Cartwright has in respect of the adoption of the open space, but I don't think, as I say, that's a reason for either deferring the application or indeed refusing the application. It is good practice. In terms of planning, it's about securing the right development in the right place at the right time. This permission would secure that in terms of establishing what level of open space is provided, what level of affordable housing is provided. You do have the assurance that the detailed development of the site in terms of the mixed design, the open space layout will all be coming back before committee for due consideration. And that will happen after reserved matters have been submitted and consulted upon, including with the parish council and with neighbours, etc. So much the same as a detailed planning application, you'll be filling in the gaps that you don't have at the moment. But this outline is establishing the principles of securing affordable housing, securing the principle of development, securing the levels of affordable housing and open space, etc., etc. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Giebel, did you want to speak?
Well, I hadn't put my hand up.
Sorry, I see you raised.
I mean, I was going to speak later on, but
No problem.
if you want me to speak now.
No,
I'm happy
it's
to,
it's
move
whether
things
you
along.
wish to present for anyone else.
I mean, I think this is a really difficult decision to make because I know this area well. I know the Firs very well. They're stunning. And I know Harleston Village a bit as well. And it's also very beautiful. I also know about the need for housing as well, the enormous pressures that exist. And knowing that this is actually a field that it's not going to impact directly on the Firs as such, I think that it's really difficult to turn to say that that the open space should override the need that people have for housing, knowing how desperately that housing is needed. I think one of my concerns about it, which was flagged up in some of my questioning, was that I do question exactly what kind of housing need these homes would meet. The parish council has obviously highlighted the need for accommodation for older people, which is clearly important. My concern, I have to say, is probably more around pricing, because these look like very desirable houses in an absolutely stunning location, and those houses tend to be quite expensive. And certainly, if given what we've heard about the design and so on, I would just wonder about how affordable is affordable, and certainly if it's affordable to rent. I wonder whether the rentals would be within reach of most sort of families on ordinary incomes. I wasn't clear from the recommendations that everything was going to come back to committee, which I think would be very important, because I'd read it that the assistant director was being given delegated powers to take this forward. And I would certainly want to see, perhaps if that can be clarified or written in, that the committee and yourself, Chair, should have much more responsibility and input into the final details of that, if that's possible.
Okay, through you, Chairman. Committee is being asked to determine this application. This is an outline application.
Yeah, I understand that.
So this is stage one. If it's approved, then it would be subject to a 106 agreement. The heads of terms are set out in the report. which deal with the affordable housing, et cetera. If that is signed and sealed and that decision is issued, then outline permission is granted. There would then be a subsequent application for reserved matters, which would be the detailed application. It's not but it would be pursuant to the outline. So it would be a detailed application, filling in all the details in terms of the detailed layout of it. That application for reserved matters would be subject to consultations, much in the normal way we do with other applications.
Okay.
So what you're being asked tonight is to determine this application on the basis that officers will progress the 106 agreement in negotiations with the applicants in accordance with the heads of terms set out in the report. Once that agreement is signed and sealed, the decision will be issued, and then the applicants obviously will pursue a reserve matters at some stage.
I understand that, but the point is about the affordable housing provision. That is what I'm particularly concerned about. And are you saying that that will also come back, or will that be something that officers negotiate without reference to the committee or the chair?
Again, the report is quite clear. It sets out the consultation response from your housing officers, the council's housing officers who are fully supportive of the application. We would expect their input into the wording of the Section 106 agreement in terms of the affordable housing requirements, mixed tenure, percentages, etc., including when those affordable houses would be delivered, the various trigger points, etc. But that would be part of the 106 negotiation.
Yeah, but you're saying that would be entirely negotiated by officers, including the housing officers. I completely take that point, but that there wouldn't be any input from, say, the chair or the committee on it's particularly about the housing issues. Because if we're going to forego very beautiful open space for housing, then we've got to be really clear about what type of housing. That's what I'm concerned about.
I'll let legal respond to that.
Through you, Chair, the Section 106 for the outline matter would be in accordance with these heads of terms. And as is normal practice, we would negotiate with the developer's solicitor and probably me in consultation with housing and the planning department to incorporate the heads of terms that are on the first page of this committee report. After the 106 is agreed and signed, it will then have an input into the reserve matters application, because everybody, both the developer and us, will know the reserve matters coming forward. But if the planning officers would like to add something, but from a legal perspective, we would draft and consult on the basis of the heads of terms that are in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do the officers want to
respond? Yeah, if I may, Chair, just to say on the affordable housing, there's two types of affordable housing. There's social rent and affordable rent. Affordable rent is up to 80% of market rent. Then social rent would be a bit lower than that, probably around 50 to 60%. At the moment, from my understanding, the heads of terms are that we're going to get the proposal is for 40% affordable housing, and as the gentleman said, 2/3 of which will be rental accommodation. But at the moment, I don't think, unless I'm mistaken, we're not at the moment differentiating between affordable and social rent. So and as Sian has pointed out, the Section 106 agreement is never normally returned to committee. That's an unusual thing. Normally, if we follow the heads of terms, we then, as long as we're in line with the committee resolution, then the Section 106 is signed and the planning permission is issued. But if members felt particularly concerned about affordability, you could put in stipulation to say that we want to negotiate a proportion of social rent within the affordable rent. I don't think you'd get all of the 2/3 as social rent, but I expect we'd be able to negotiate an element of social rent stipulated within that 2/3.
Sorry, Councillor Frost. Okay.
Okay. I mean, I think, Chair, from what I've heard, it very much touches to the point that people have brought up repeatedly, members of the public, about the fact that there's a lot of housing development, there's a lot of new housing going up that most people can't afford, and that the definition of affordable is quite strained. And obviously affordable to rent is equally problematic, can be equally problematic as affordable to buy, because of, you know, the problem is the actual price of it. And I'm sorry, I can't read your name on your name tag. I think it was in the
Simon Ellis.
Yeah, thank you very much. Touched on more of the points, which is that I think it would be really helpful if the detail of the affordability and of that aspect of the housing, whether it's social or you know, social affordable or private sector affordable, I completely understand the difference and, you know, difference between those two, would come back to you, Chair, so that you could have some input into what is actually delivered on the ground. Because the worst thing would be that people agree to a housing development to meet housing need, and actually it doesn't meet the needs of a lot of people in the area because they're completely priced out of it. And that would be one of my concerns.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just through discussions with legal, if we were to input that negotiation into the heads of terms, we could add the chair and the vice chair of this committee as consultees as part of that. So essentially what you're asking for, yes, we could do in consultation with the chair of this committee and the vice chair.
You, Chair. Sorry.
Go
Just to remind all members that we have policy, and our policy requirements will reflect what is affordable, what is social rent, and as the agent has said, there can be a split, but it must be in accordance with our policy. We cannot go out of our policy for this particular matter because we are required to deal with our development plan and the policies that are included within it. So I just wanted to make everyone aware that.
Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Chair. So in summary, we've got a situation where the application is contrary to policy because it's outside the boundaries, but in the opinion of the Planning Office, it's accepted that there are downsides, but their opinion is that the upsides outweigh the downsides, and so it's being suggested to us that we approve it. And of course, it's true that if we do so, then as Sian says, the due process would follow that. You know, if everything goes to plan, negotiations go wonderfully well, and all of I think our concerns, I'm reading the room, and the concerns that we've learned from the community would be dealt with, and you know, we'd all live happily ever after. But I've seen, frankly, too many situations where things, how shall I put it politely, don't always go to plan. Listen carefully to what Eamon says, and I keep coming back to what Councillor Cartwright says. Just as we wouldn't be breaking any rules by approving it and letting the process run, we wouldn't be breaking any rules either, but by deferring until to get some of these things, to get some you know, more detail around some of the things that we've talked about. So if there was someone you know, if I had any support, I personally, I'm nervous about approving this in its current form and just hoping that everything works out. That's my position anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any further questions from the more comments from the committee? Okay. So does anyone wish to make a proposal at this point in favour of the motion to approve?
Sorry, Chair. I'm agree with Councillor Frost. I think we need a bit more flesh on the bones of this.
Okay.
I understand, you know, these things often change. When you put the outline planning permission in, right, you've got permission to build, and then the developers can change it anyway. I'd rather get something in line before that happens, if that's possible.
Yep. Sorry? Is anyone making a proposal at all for this motion? Yep.
I think from what I can understand of the debate, if the committee are only concerned about, well, not only, but are concerned about the implementation of the development and whether or not the open space might be adopted by the parish council, whether or not the final affordable housing mix is affordable. So elements of the Section 106 agreement, what you're effectively saying is you want to defer the planning application to put flesh on the bones of the Section 106 agreement and then bring it back to you before you resolve the decision. I think if that's what your concern is, that's a positive deferral. You would almost need to have to say, otherwise, where this development is acceptable, we're in line with officer recommendation. We just want further clarity on these logistical points. I think what you'd be in danger of doing if you didn't make that sort of positive deferral is if you were to say, we want all of these points resolved in the Section 106 agreement. The lawyers and the applicant's lawyer then goes away and drafts the whole thing, comes back to you, and you all of a sudden say, do you know what, we're going to refuse it on Green Wedge. I think that could be misconstrued as almost unreasonable behaviour. So I think you need to, if that's what the concern of the committee is, we could take that away. But I think you'd need to make it clear that that's a positive deferral rather than a we're not sure about this, and when it comes back, we might just chuck it all out anyway. Do you see what I mean? Is that the concern? Is it about logistics, or is it a whole? Is there something more serious?
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. I mean, I take that point very seriously, because if it's assumed if it looks like it's unreasonable or it looks like it's a refusal, then given the very strong recommendation from the officers and the fact it would be challengeable. And I think that would be unhelpful all round. I mean, from my point of view, looking at the application, it looks as if everything's sort of in line with planning policy. However, there are issues, particularly around the affordability one, which I'm concerned about, which I would have thought could be resolved during a negotiation process if the chair and the vice chair have some input into that, so that we're clear about what we're actually getting, and the way in which that's implemented. And subject to that, I mean, I personally, albeit I agree, I understand it's a difficult decision all round. I think that the scheme should go ahead.
Okay, so you make a proposal in favour on,
but with the caveat built in, which people might want to put something else in, but certainly with the input during the negotiation stage to make sure, in particular around the affordability issue.
Okay.
I think that's a different proposal. That is essentially, this is the last time that this full committee would see the planning application. And what you're proposing is that the Section 106 agreement is then negotiated, picking up on the elements that have been raised here, and then chair and vice chair have final look at that before it's sealed. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? That's even more.
That's for the outline.
Yeah.
That's for the outline.
And then the reserve matters comes back anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So just to summarise your proposal then, Councillor Keeble, before it's then seconded and put to the vote, is to approve the application in accordance with the officer's recommendations. That is the outline application at this stage, subject to the inclusion of the chair and the vice chair of this committee in the resolution of and negotiation of the heads of terms in the Section 106 agreement. Does that adequately summarise?
In particular with the affordability issue.
With the affordability. Okay,
In particular.
so does that summarise your proposal adequately? Okay. Put it to you, Chair, to second and vote on.
Okay. Do we have a seconder at all for this? Councillor Talbot. Okay, and we'll put it to a vote. So all those in favour of Councillor Keeble's motion? All those against? And those abstaining? Okay, that motion is lost. Okay. So we come back again. So are there alternative proposals?
I just wanted to highlight, Councillor Keeble, you were talking about it all looks like it's in order with planning policy, but planning policy have raised objections for multiple reasons. So I just think that needs to be given more weight, and that's what I wanted to say.
If I could just say that this is in terms of the recommendations that have been made by the planning officers. That is what I was referring to. Okay, that if the planning officers recommend, then it's recognising that those recommendations.
What I'm saying is I think, so thank you for clarifying, but yeah, I want to give more weight to planning policies objections, and there are many, so yeah.
Which objections in particular are you referring to then? Is that more around the green wedge policy?
I mean, there are so many. Well, it's on principle of development. So I mean, one here is would not meet any of the supported forms of development listed in policy RA6 of the LPP2. But there's so many, and yeah.
Further contributions? Councillor Frost.
I just make a point. I mean, I take on board what the lead local flood authorities say, that once again, everything's going to be fine. But frankly, I've seen too many situations where that doesn't play out. And I'm looking at a topographical map, if that's the right expression, of the area, and it's clear that there's not a massive difference in it, but the land is higher in the woods. I don't know if you can go back to the map. It's higher in the woods than it is in the surrounding area. And so even if we are prepared to believe the arguments that it must be true that land currently provides some sort of attenuation for the properties on York Way, and it can't do it any good. So if just throwing this into the mix, if back to what Simon was saying earlier, and being seen to be reasonable in terms of sort of putting one's mind at rest, I think I'd want my mind to be put at rest that not only are the new properties not going to be flooded, but the ones further downstream, frankly, are going to be okay as well. Because at the moment, yeah, I'm nervous about it.
It's very true. I'm picking up the point in the fact that it is very close to Dallington Brook, which flows through the middle of my ward, and it has been on a few occasions. There's been flooding within the village, which is basically downstream from these developments, and plus the fact you've also got Dallington Grange, where 3,000 houses are being built, which at the back of mind is a consideration. These are brownfield sites, and again, this section is as pointed out by members of the residents, that this is part of the green wedge.
Thank you, Chair. And in the past, we've seen studies or methods put in place for sort of what is said to be sort of 1 in 100-year events, only to find that something's changing out there. That means that what was a 1 in 100-year event is happening every sort of 1 in 15 years, you know. So thank you.
Okay.
Again, through you, Chairman, my understanding the legal, you have the advice of the local lead flood authority. They have obviously assessed the application as initially submitted. There have been subsequent iterations and further information that have satisfied them in terms of dealing with flood risk. Their approach is about not only dealing with flood risk on the site, but also beyond the site. So that's very fundamentally how the local lead flood authority approach these development proposals. And we haven't seen any other evidence to counter that. So what I would suggest, if you're thinking about that route, where is your evidence to outweigh the advice that you've been given by the local lead flood authority?
Well, I can provide plenty of examples of where they've been wrong. That would be helpful.
Again, I look forward to your evidence at an appeal if should that arise.
Sorry, no calling out, please. Sorry, Simon Ellis.
I think we're just looking at the schedule of recommended conditions, and number 9 deals with reserve matters applications should update the flood risk assessment as they come forward. And we've already advised you that the reserve matters applications will come to this committee. If you wanted to isolate the issue of surface water drainage, notwithstanding Eamon's clear advice that if you were to refuse planning permission on surface water drainage issues, the committee would need to come up with evidence at any subsequent appeal to demonstrate why their own advisor from their own council is incorrect. But if you wanted some reassurance on belt and braces, it's within your remit to say that condition 8, which is the flood drainage system, needs to be approved by you as well as the reserve matters. So you can continue with getting oversight over further elements of this development as you move forward. I think if you isolate that flood issue, there is a way forward where the committee can still have some oversight of that, which I think it would be less risky than refusing planning permission on flood issues. As you know, as we've done in all the training and all other decisions that you make, whenever you go down a technical route, the committee is always vulnerable because you've got to come up with your own technical evidence to disregard the evidence of your experts that is already in this recommendation.
Thank you. I only said what I said so that if, dealing with your earlier point, that if it does, well, I don't even know how that tonight's going to go, but if it did go down the progressive, whatever expression used, I didn't want to, by saying what I said, I wanted to reserve the right to talk about that in the future. That was all I meant. But Eamon's quite right, of course, in what he says.
Anyone else wish to make any comments? Any further proposals then?
Okay, Chair, I propose that we accept the application as put before us, provided we can come back on some of the 106 stuff later.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for this at all?
Sorry, Chair, as a point of order, I think that boat sailed, isn't it? We've done that.
Yeah, I think it's the same as Councillor Keeple's motion, wasn't it? That's rejected. So,
is there anything addition to Councillor Keeble's motion earlier, such as the point Councillor Frost raised and the issue surrounding condition 8 that Simon raised, that could be brought back to committee in isolation to deal with the flooding issues? That would make it a substantially different motion.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Frost's consent.
do we have any seconders for this?
Sorry, Chair, I'm confused. What's? Can you summarise that? What's?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll summarise your proposal, Councillor Cartwright, which is to approve the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation, subject to the inclusion of the chair and the vice chair in the resolution of and negotiation of the heads of terms on the 106 in respect of affordable rent, and for condition 8, which deals with the issue of flooding and surface water, to be approved separately by this committee in addition to reserve matters as well. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I just say that because that's in addition to what I'd proposed, when I proposed about the affordability, it wasn't just rent, it was affordability including rent. So if you can do affordability including rent. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder for this proposal? Okay, Councillor Keeble. Okay, so we will take a vote on the motion proposed by Councillor Cartwright. So all those in favour of Councillor Cartwright's motion? All those against? Those abstaining? Four.
Sorry, Chair, so it's your casting vote.
I go against it. So.
That motion is lost and has fallen.
Okay. So, at this point, we'll go back to any sort of further contributions. what, Councillor Frost, sorry.
Sorry, through you, Chair, forgive me. Can we find out where we are then? Are we looking at, we don't want to build on there at all, or we want to build, but we want something different? Does anybody, you're adamant we just don't want to build on there? Is that what it is?
Personally, I think, like I say, it's part of the policy, the whole green wedge thing is where that, we're starting to encroach now into new territory. Like I said, we've got a massive build happening to one side, and this development is not part of that at all. Yeah. So again, it's just putting it out there. Again, as Councillor Keeble mentioned earlier, Harleston Firs is a beautiful area. I think it's already lost some of it as part of this new development. And again, this just seems to be, to me personally, eating more into this area. And I think if we ignore the whole green wedge thing, then we're turning a blind eye to some of the policies, significant policies there, which sort of protect settlements and their characteristics.
Chair, my view is the same as yours. I recognise all the things that the planning officer said. I know there's a chronic shortage of housing in the area, so I hear that. I also see huge numbers of disused buildings and more towards the centre of Northampton. I just wish we could find a way of developing those without, as you say, encroaching outside the boundaries into rather beautiful, green wedges and things. But I suppose we do have to focus on what the on sort of planning law. It is against the rules. If it goes to appeal, what would the inspector say? He'd say, he or she would say, it's against the rules, and they would have to decide whether the benefits, I suppose, outweigh them. I'd prefer it if we could build, within the inside of the boundary rather than outside of it. But yeah, what's everyone else's view?
I mean, given what development's going on in the area anyway, when you follow the Sandy Lane Relief Road, there's a big development that's been happening there. Obviously, like I said, there's Dallington Grange, and there's also the development that's happened around the Overston and Sywell area. So we are seeing significant on this edge of the of Northampton. So so we are seeing a significant. I mean, it's a case of then we need to find, like I say, proper sites for these sort of buildings, whether it's infill or proper brownfield allocation sites. I think we've got to obviously think about preserving the open countryside and the green wedge as well. For me, so I'd go with refusal. Basically, I propose to refuse it on the basis of policy NV3, which is the green wedge. So I don't know if there's any sort of seconds for that one. Councillor Cartwright. Okay. Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just to summarise where we are and summarise the proposal from yourself, seconded by Councillor Cartwright. The proposal is to refuse the application contrary to the case officer's recommendation on the grounds that the application is contrary to policy ENV3 of the Settlements and Countryside Part 2 local plan, in that the proposal represents unacceptable encroachment onto the green wedge. Does that adequately summarise the proposal?
Yes.
Okay. Over to you, Chair. Can
we have a vote in favour of this policy? Those against? And those abstaining? Okay, that motion's carried.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wish to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a quick 5-minute break for drinks and refreshments and comfort breaks.
No. No.
No problem. See you soon.
Okay, I think everyone's back now. We will resume with the next item, which is item 7, land east of Toaster Road, Milton Mulsall. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Christopher Bates, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This application was originally called in by Councillor Brown, given that the application was in loss of open space and also not preserve or enhance the conservation area, and was considered to be contrary to policies LH1, GS2 and HE6 of the local plan part 2. Also, the application was originally deferred for a committee site visit, and then in a later committee was deferred on design grounds to provide minor changes designed to pay homage to the conservation area and nearby buildings. It was not deferred to redesign the layout, and all matters were considered acceptable, and therefore, except the design, nothing else has changed in the proposal. I will quickly glance over the site context to refresh memory. Application site is located in the confines of Milton Mesa, and it's on the eastern side of Toaster Road. Here's a quick aerial view of the land. Shown on the screen is the extent of the conservation area. Dotted in grey are the listed buildings, and here's the application site to the western side. As previously explained, the site is not designated as a local green space. That is covered in the committee report, and so therefore local plan policy GS2 is not relevant, contrary to the call-in. To give some context of the historical changes, OS maps 1885 and 1952 are given on the screen. As you can see, these were farmland associated with the manor farm here. So on the left-hand side, it is kind of open, and then and also in 1952, you can see some encroachment onto the eastern, southern eastern corners. And then again, in 1999 and 2025, you can see the fragmentation of the land with development encouraged to the eastern side, and also on the north and eastern boundary, and somewhat to the southern boundaries. Some site photos as well. So this is looking south along Toaster Road, where the proposed entrance is to be. This is also looking south and east. Looking north and east across the site. And this is looking north towards the listed building. Here's also some viewpoints along Toaster Road. In terms of the latest proposed site plan, a supplementary design memorandum was submitted to demonstrate the changes. In terms of the site layouts, we have got plots A and B have been repositioned backwards of the site boundary, and this retains the historic listed, the historic wall that's not listed to the frontage. Also, 4 trees will be retained on this frontage. Also, carports have been reduced to 3 to 2, which now increases the openness across the site. The overall sale remains one which is both fluid and well spaced out in a courtyard style arrangement, which pays respect to the locality. Again, the mature lime tree here has been retained, and all dwellings constructed around to keep this as a focal point. All dwellings retain sufficient separation distances between one another and also the adjoining neighbouring properties. An extensive landscaping scheme includes the planting of trees along Toaster Road. Whilst access and park arrangements have been confirmed as acceptable by the local highways authority. Here's an example of one of the dwellings. The dwellings will borrow architectural cues from the local area and will use a high quality design with local limestone and natural slate roofs. This section, as shown along Toaster Road, illustrates how the site would come forward as viewed upon from Toaster Road. To emphasise again how the design borrows materials and design cues from the local area, as seen on screen. They'll use matching materials, roof pitches at 35 degrees, sandstone lintels, stone parapets at the verges have been reinforced, vertically slated timber doors and ironstone wardrobe bounds with top capping. To emphasise this, also various windows along Toaster Road have been reduced in size and also along other elevations. This is to ensure they align more closely with the surrounding properties. As already alluded to, the parapet gables will be raised to make these more prominent. Corbelled eaves have been added to some of the plots, and 2 of the plots now have chimneys to either side to replicate those styles in the surrounding vicinity. In terms of 3D visuals, these clearly demonstrate the high quality design dwellings with subtle and intricate improvements clearly on board, following on from the previous planning committee. The dwellings proposed are clearly proportionate to those surrounding the development and would act as an extension to the built form. Officers have placed an emphasis on the use of premium products as a local house builder, also to emphasise the importance of various conditions, such as conditions 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, which give the council final sign-off on detailed design as materials and finishes prior to construction. Let's go through some of these illustrations. So that's looking south on Toaster Road, and that's looking north. Looking inward, the site, you can see the courtyard style arrangement with the carports and obviously the arrangement of the landscaping. Looking opposite side towards the listed building. and once again, looking inward of the site. Poster technical documentations were also included to obviously to overcome any technical consultees. These are shown on the screen. In terms of the planning balance, as acknowledged in the committee report, extensive list of benefits are to be delivered. Whilst there was considered to be less than substantial harm on the conservation area, this is placed on the low end of the spectrum, and the overall benefits clearly outweigh the identified harm. Owing to this, the officer's recommendation is to grant permission subject to conditions appended to the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So at this point, I'll ask the committee if there are any questions they'd like to ask the officers. No. Okay. At this point, we'll move to public speaking in the following order. So Jerry Foskett of their local residents.
Good evening. We continue to strongly oppose this application for the reasons already submitted to the Planning Committee on 2 previous occasions. Is it an appropriate design? The National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 131, refers to high quality, beautiful and sustainable buildings. The local plan supports this framework and adds that the importance of good design and discouraging the imposition of inflexible architectural design. The conservation area. The NPPF paragraph 210 states the desirability of new developments making a positive contribution to the character and distinctiveness of the area. Great weight should be given to the significance of the area and the impact on it by the proposed development. Local plan policy HE6 states respect the character and the appearance of the area in terms of scale, form, massing, design, materials and details. Does it preserve or enhance the significance of the area? Good design is fundamental in policy terms, and the committee were right to reject previous submissions as the proposal is of poor design quality. The minutes of the committee meeting on the 5th of June recommended a deferral to allow the applicant to submit further detailed designs for each dwelling to enable the proposed development to better reflect the existing character of its surroundings in order to integrate the development into the wider village setting. Minor design alterations do not make a poor design which was unacceptable acceptable. The Council's Housing Land Supply Assessment of April 2025 states a housing requirement from this fiscal year to 2029-30 as 13,141 dwellings. The housing land supply for the same period had a deliverable of 14,409 dwellings. This demonstrates that there is no requirement or compelling reason to approve a very poorly designed development on conservation land, which is a restricted infill village with open paddock land at its heart and its surroundings. The council has policies to support the reason for refusal. The case officer's report states that the development recommendation is on balance. Our position is that on balance, this should not be approved as the criteria has not been met. It is the responsibility of the council to ensure that it is the right form as required by policy and guidance, which this application significantly fails. For the reasons that we have set out, we submit that this is contrary to your policies and the Planning Committee recommendations of the 5th of June 2025. We strongly urge the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee for the speaker? Councillor McMurtry.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what about it isn't sympathetic to the local area. As far as I can see, it's built out of similar materials, and I mean, whether it's of good quality is up to interpretation. To me, it looks nice, but I'd just like you to expand on that. Why isn't it sympathetic? Why is it bad? Why is it taking away from the local area?
The development would be surrounded by listed buildings, a hall of historical significance.
This committee said the design was poor last time it was here. It said the design for, if it was to be considered to be built on conservation land, should be consummate to that, should be of, I can't remember the words you said now, exceptional. It should be of exceptional design. This design is an inward-looking development. The footpath goes the wrong way around the village. There's so many fundamental things that are wrong with this design. It just would not fit into the village location. It would change the shape of that, change the shape of the village, and we would lose conservation land.
Any further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now call on Leanne Riley, a local resident. The red light comes on the microphone.
When looking at the new designs, there doesn't seem to be any major changes. This is our third time being here. I don't understand how a new development can have ironstone cladding, and I don't understand how the new development can have ironstone cladding, even though most of the surrounding properties are built in refurbished using stone mandated by the Heritage Department and the site being a conservation area. So basically all the houses around are built mainly of stone, and they want to put in stone cladding, which is not in keeping with the surrounding houses. The field is also on a hill with at least 7 surrounding properties. The developments haven't taken into account light and noise pollution. How would you feel if your car headlights shine it into your garden and house because developments haven't put enough trees and shrubs or made any walls higher? All 7 gardens back onto this field. So 7 families will be affected by this. In particular, my shared drive with my neighbour, there is no opportunity to plant extra trees as this will block the exit of our property. I am also worried about the drainage. This has not been addressed in the plans. With the field sitting a lot higher than my home and my neighbours' properties, we are worried the rainfall and any other drainage could end up overflowing into our gardens. My next door neighbour already has issues with his soakaway and is constantly having drainage people out due to the rise in water level in the area. Although Anglia Water do not comment on small developments like this, there are no main waste that can be tapped into, and therefore septic tanks will need to be used for all the properties. This has not been factored into the designs. I also feel strongly about the safety, and I want to take this off my conscience as bring up again the point of the dangerous road layout, having the S-bends. Basically on the pictures, it didn't show you that each side you've got 2 S-bends, and when you turn out of the properties, you cannot see. And basically how they're putting the designs is there's going to be 2 driveways right next to each other, and you've got to try and get onto a busy main road with 60 new houses being built up a mile up the road. And planning for a new industrial site less than a mile away the opposite direction of the road. Traffic is going to increase, therefore the risk of accidents on the bends of the section roads will also increase. And you propose to put another 5 houses with at least 2 cars, at least, per property into the mix. Like I mentioned twice before, I've had to go outside my personal self with my family and do first aid, because of these S-bends, because people were going too fast on a 40 zone area. I just want to put that out there because it's me who has to live there with my conscience of safety and the locals.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No, thank you very much. I now ask Paul Heath on behalf of Milton Walsall Parish Council.
Hello, I'm Paul Heath, Parish Councillor for Milton Malsa, speaking on behalf of the council. We remain opposed to the application on several grounds. Following concerns expressed by this committee, several modifications have been made to the designs. Plots A and B have been moved back slightly from Toaster Road, but this has been at the cost of reducing rear garden size, and that layout continues to compromise the privacy of Plots A and B's gardens. In response to criticisms about the external appearance of the houses and their appropriateness for the conservation area setting, some small changes have been made to fenestration, parapet gables, eaves and chimneys. However, the original shape and massing of the buildings remains unaltered, and the overall impression of simple rectilinear blocks remains, which may not meet the expectations of the committee and does not enhance the conservation area. We emphasise the Milton Malsa conservation area appraisal, which urges protection of open paddocks and warns against inappropriate developments in what is a restricted infill village. We also note policy SS2 of the local plan part 2, which states development should not harm neighbouring properties through noise, overshadowing or outlook. I attempted at the last committee meeting to obtain clarity on the local highway authority's decision to approve the site entrance arrangements, but did not receive an explanation. DMRB regulations require a visual splay of almost 120 metres. It's admitted by the LHA that only 106 metres is achievable in one direction, but this is acceptable as a new lower standard can now be applied. This standard was not invoked initially, is inappropriate for a busy road with a 40-mile-an-hour limit, which is further encumbered by central twin white lines, a nearby blind staggered crossroads, and a T-junction with limited visibility. As there have been no significant changes to address our previous multiple concerns, we urge the committee to reject the application.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Oh, sorry.
No. Okay, thank you very much. Now ask Andrew Parry, agent for the applicants.
Thank you, Chair. Members resolved at the June committee to defer determination so that my client could make small changes to the plans to better integrate the proposed homes with their local setting. It was agreed that fundamental changes to the layout, scale or nature of the scheme were not necessary. The site sits within the settlement boundary of Milton Malsa and in principle represents a sustainable and appropriate location for new infill development in accordance with policy LH1. The land is also not identified as an important area of open space within the conservation area, nor does it contribute to any important views. It also has no public access. However, we accept it makes a contribution to the setting of the village and conservation area, and my client has therefore been keen to work with your officers to revisit the previous designs and make subtle but important changes to improve them. The Village Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan sets out the key characteristics that make Milton Malsa special, such as stone and brick boundary walls, vernacular style buildings, consistency of materials, primarily ironstone and slate, and informal highway arrangements. We have also paid close attention to the Milton Malsa Village Design Guide note, which states that infill development within the conservation area should be in a matching ironstone with slate or clay plain tile roofing. New buildings within the historic core of the village should also be sited close to the road edge or have substantial matching boundary walls to maintain the sense of enclosure and provide visual links between old and new buildings. We have established that the main design cues for this scheme are the Grade 2 listed barns immediately to the north comprising Manor Farm, as well as 1A Malsa Lane and the newer properties immediately east of the site at numbers 4 and 5 Malsa Lane that were permitted in 2010. To reflect these cues, we have incorporated several bespoke design features such as the ironstone brickwork, natural slate roof tiles, sandstone sills around doors and window openings, stone parapet walls to plots A, B and E, double chimneys to plots B and D, and patras plate features to some elevations. These all add visual interest and a vernacular feel to the development and demonstrate the care taken to produce a high-quality design that incorporates locally found features over and above standard new build houses and is respectful of its location. The scheme architect has created a series of 3D rendered images, which now give a better impression of the dwellings when viewed from different angles. Members can take comfort from the fact that conditions 4 to 7 in the officer's report give the authority added control and require final details of all materials and finishes to be submitted and approved prior to commencement of development. Your officer's professional view is that the scheme will lead to the lowest level of harm to the setting of the conservation area and nearby listed buildings, and that this limited harm is outweighed by the benefits of the proposal. These include the development of a new 120-metre footpath, 2 metres wide, on Toaster Road. My client has worked collaboratively with your officers on this design of the scheme since it was submitted back in January 2023. We fully support their conclusions that this application accords with local and national policy, and there are no other material considerations or technical reasons that would justify a refusal. Overall, therefore, we believe that the changes made are positive improvement on the previous design and should give members confidence to approve a high-quality development.
Can you conclude your
fitting
statement, please?
Of its location.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Councillor Keeble.
Shouldn't have sung out like that. I wonder, you say there's been an extra pavement provided. You provided a footpath, and that's a new inclusion in the current design.
No, that was in the proposal.
Okay, yeah. I wonder if you could comment about the point that was raised about the safety issues on the roads and the crossing, and whether you considered those in the design proposals, and whether there's any measures that you put in place to take consideration of those.
I mean, in terms of pedestrian safety, so the footpath that we're proposing is on the eastern side of Toaster Road, and it would go to the south and connect to Rectory Lane. So there would be no need to cross coming out of the site. You would just come immediately south. At the moment, there's no footpath there. It's just a verge, and people do have to cross over onto the western carriageway of Toaster Road. In terms of vehicular safety, the case officer report covers it. In terms of the visibility display, the Highways Authority are happy that there is a marginal decrease in the standard visibility display, but they're happy based on the number of movements proposed, which is only 15 each way movements each day, 15 each way, so 30 in total per day, based on 5 houses. The Highways Authority are happy that that's efficient in a 40-mile-an-hour zone.
Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. I was curious, are there drainage systems in there that you're using, or are you looking at septic tanks?
To be talking about surface water drainage or foul?
Both surface water to get rid of, but sewers.
Surface water is to be dealt with on site. I'm not a geologist, but I understand that the soakaway option has been explored and is probably not suitable. So there's a storage option, an engineered storage solution that's been proposed, and that's detailed in the reports. There is a condition, I don't have the number to hand, but there's a condition in the officer report that would require full details of that scheme to be submitted and approved. In terms of foul, as I think was pointed out earlier, there is no response from Anglian Water to the application because of the size, but there is, as we understand, 2 potential connection points, one that's on Molesey Lane and one that's on the field to the west of the site, on the other side of Toaster Road. And as part of the development process, we would get the necessary consents to connect to those. If, in the worst case scenario, there isn't capacity at those, there is a potential solution on site to deal with it. It's not necessarily a septic tank. I think these days it's more advanced than that. It's an on-site sort of treatment solution, basically. But yeah, there's multiple options.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. So do we know the boundary wall is not protected in any way?
As I said, it's not listed. It is. We understand we accept it's an important part of conservation area, and listed walls are non-listed walls. Historic walls are identified as a key feature within the conservation area. And actually, I think one of the benefits of the scheme that we've revised is, previously we were actually looking at incorporating that wall into a couple of the houses, which sort of reflected what happens at Manor Farm at the moment. The revised scheme actually would mean we don't touch the wall at all, so it retains as it is and actually, restores it back to its previous state, and it also enables us to retain some of the trees as well. So actually, moving those properties away from the wall sort of helps us to retain more of it.
Okay, I know the road extremely well. So for the rest of the committee, could you tell them the height of that wall and the width for the opening you're planning to on the proposal?
I mean, I don't have the height of the wall to hand. The width of the road, I believe, is 4.5 metres that goes into the site, and that's conditioned as well in the officer's report.
Yeah, that was just my main concern, the entry and exit of the site itself. And like I said, I do know the road extremely well, and I'll have more to say in the committee. Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Frost?
Thank you. Yeah. Look, the planning report makes it clear this is a sort of one of those sort of on balance things. So my question is not strictly related to planning, but it's just to help me better understand some of the background. So you've explained that the reasons why your scheme is in the public interest because of the footpath and things like that. How much dialogue has there been with the parish council, and have you been able to communicate your the advantages and things? And secondly, how did it kind of come about? So I looked up Centralis, for whom you're acting, but I don't think they're local to the area. Could you give us just a little bit of the background to how, because it is a finely balanced thing, isn't it?
So starting with your second question, Centralis, I believe are Warwickshire based, so they're not North Hampshire, but they are relatively local. And they are doing developments across the area. They're doing one in Stratford-upon-Avon at the moment, which is again a sort of heritage sensitive development. In terms of engagement, personally, I wasn't involved, so I've been engaged sort of later in the process. I understand that the Centralis as a developer did meet with Parish Council initially to discuss some of the plans. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, so I can't really comment on what was discussed, but I'm sure that did come up as a part of the proposal at the time.
Any further questions? Do you want to come back at all? No? Okay.
Through you, Chair, I just want to remind everybody that who the applicant is not a material planning consideration. So when you're considering the application, it's the application before you and not who is actually the developer on the site. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Yep, okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, are there any points that the officers wish to come back on at this point?
Yes, in response to some of the objection comments, yes, the land is not designated as an open space. Obviously, as the agent will refer to, there's no public access to it. So yes, it's obviously yes, it's obviously how it is now. It used to be, well, it's commonly a part of the farmland, which obviously the land used to be as well. So obviously that's been fragmented over time. In terms of materials, yes, we've got various conditions to obviously kind of reinforce that quality. Going back to the amenity and obviously the light spill, all the amenities obviously been deemed as acceptable. We've got lighting condition as well to kind of reinforce that. Going back to the light spill, we've got a landscaping plan proposed as well, so that kind of reinforces that kind of a sentiment, and also the drainage has been covered off by the agent. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so we now move to the committee to debate this application. Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. Can I just ask some questions?
Certainly, yeah.
The officers. It was particular about the final one about the accidents and the issues about road safety in particular. I mean, we covered the point about pedestrians, but also about the vehicles, because I notice in the report, just sort of looking up after that, that there was the local highways authority, the original plans and transport assessment, speed surveys, accident data, etc., were deemed to not be acceptable. But following the submission of an amended transport assessment and site plans, it was deemed that the development was acceptable, and I'm just surprised, given the description that was given of the blind bends and so on, and the experience that residents have had of having to deal with accidents, and then the increased usage from the 5 extra residences, which would presumably all have a good couple of cars each because of, you know, where the development is and so on. I'm just surprised that the assessment, unless I'm misreading the report, appears to have changed, and what thought, if any thought's been given to improving road safety. 40 miles an hour in a residential area like this is actually quite high, I would have thought. You know, in most residential areas, it's 30, isn't it? And I wonder what thought's been given to that.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, that was based on the regional access, which is to be quite central to the site. So they've moved the access north now.
Sorry, don't call out, please.
Original proposals were for the access to be central, and they've obviously moved that northbound, northward to where it is now. And as part of that, they've done traffic safety, they've done tricks analysis, yes. And so they've obviously done the extensive nature of the reports, and the Highways Authority have agreed with that. So I've got some facts here. They say obviously it's in paragraph 7.39, and they've talked about obviously all the kind of speed limits, and they've talked about the acceptance of the vehicles exceeding the speed limit. Yeah, so they've also they've taken that into account, and also they were available on the committee site visit, and they spoke to members at the time. So yeah, that was reassured that the access is obviously acceptable, and all those matters.
Can I just come back again? I mean, I completely understand that if the access to the properties has changed, then issues about safety do change. But the number of vehicles accessing the area, moving around the area doesn't change, and the road layout doesn't change. So I'm just very surprised that there's, as I say, there's not been any greater comment than this brief bit which I'm looking at. Or that you know, an area that was previously considered unacceptable is now considered acceptable, given the experience of residents in having to deal with some form of road traffic accident, which is required first aid, which I think is what it was, wasn't it? I mean, you know, generally there've been moves towards reducing car speed and improving road safeties, and I'm surprised that there's nothing in here at all.
For you, Chair, yes, I mean, the Highways Authority were in extensive discussions with the applicant, and they carried out, you know, substantial kind of obviously road traffic testing and all that kind of, you know, analysis, and they deemed it to be acceptable, and that's, you know, that's their professional advice. And you know, 9 times out of 10, well, more than that, obviously we go with their guidance, and obviously they, you know, they went to the site visit and they spoke to members, and they kind of illustrated obviously how the access and how the obviously road traffic data was acceptable.
Thank you. No calling out. Okay. Any further questions, or Councillor Beryl?
Thank you, Chair. For me, all of the above doesn't really come into consideration. On first impression, it just looks extremely overdeveloped. That's just, I'm not sure if that holds much weight, but that's my initial thoughts of the actual development. If the traffic management is satisfied, then in my opinion, it's still overdeveloped. Over to you, committee.
Any further comments? Yep, and do we wish to move to proposal? No, you're all keen to.
All right.
Councillor Cartwright.
Okay, Chair, let's find out where we are again then. I propose we accept the application as is.
Okay, do we have any seconders? Okay.
No, I'll
Councillor McMurtry.
yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So just to summarise the proposal from Councillor Cartwright and seconded by Councillor McMurtry is to accept the officer's recommendations as set out in the report, subject to the conditions also set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Are you going to have a debate on it, or are you going to move straight to the vote?
We had to debate that. That was the point. So,
Okay.
yep.
I was going to just say that if any consideration can be given to the road safety, then I think that would be very helpful.
As an addition to the build. Is that something that could be considered?
Again, through you, Chairman, the officer's report clearly sets out the consultation responses, including that of the local highway authority. The local highway authority are raising no objections to the application. I understand the concerns of local residents in respect of highway safety. You've got to weigh out those representations from local residents against the advice of your own highway authority. If you have evidence to counter that, then you can take that into account. But the advice of the highway authority is the development is acceptable. The mitigation in terms of pedestrian safety is proposed in terms of the footpath. The access arrangements have been moved to address the highway authority's concerns. And although there's a marginal reduction in visibility displays, on balance, the highway authority appear to be satisfied with the proposed development. You're entitled to come to a different opinion, but clearly, if it goes to appeal, then the council will be expected to produce evidence that counters its own highway authority advice.
Do you wish to come back at all?
Yeah, I completely understand that, and exactly the same advice was given on the previous proposal, which I sat on, where again there was an issue about speed limits around schools and safety impact and so on. I just think it might be helpful to give some comfort to local residents that there is a way that because there are many aspects of this proposal which I think are very positive, and I'd certainly agree with the comments that have been made around that. The one thing would be that if local residents are aware that they can come back to take up the road safety issues at some later stage, perhaps through their local councillors, that might give them some consolation or some.
Again, through you, Chairman, the highway authority advise on what's required in order to make access arrangements safe. But we can't control the behaviour of drivers on the roads. Drivers have to drive responsibly. What you have before you is a scheme that satisfies the requirements of the highway authority. Now, again, you're entitled to come to your own view. If you feel that there's a requirement for conditions or whatever to alter speed limits, etc., in the vicinity of the application site, you're entitled to come to that view. But bear in mind, the applicants do have a right of appeal against such conditions if they judge those to be unreasonable or unnecessary, or don't meet the tests to mitigate the impact of the development. And the imposition of those conditions obviously need to address identified safety dangers. But as I say, you're entitled to weigh those up in the overall balance, having regard to the representations you're receiving from the local village against the advice of your own highway authority.
Councillor Cartwright.
Through you, Chair, thanks. Yeah, originally the entrance to the site was going to be further down, the gap in the wall. What they've done now is they've moved it right up next to the entrance. It's already there for Home Farm. There's several properties in there and several vehicles in there already, so they're coming in and out virtually the same place now, instead of further down nearer the bend. I don't know. There's been accidents on there, but I don't know how many have been caused when vehicles exit from those properties. But this new proposal is right next to it, so I can't see that it makes much difference from the original one.
Councillor
Thank you. Apologies for it's rather late in the day, but I just want to following Councillor Keeble's point about the highways, and through you, Chair, to Eamon, if that's okay. The report makes it clear that the Local Highways Authority have made their judgment based on the assessing the transport assessment. We know somewhat regrettably in the past that the highways people have based their have made a judgment without visiting the site. My question is are you certain that that they've visited? Can you assure the committee that they visited, or are you unable to confirm or deny because you don't know? That's my question.
The local highways authority, yes. Haley visited, and so did Phil Donaldson, yeah, and they were present at the last. No, Phil was, yeah, definitely present at last committee, yeah.
Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. For me, again, it doesn't come into consideration. I'm not saying that land isn't fit for development. I'm saying it's overdeveloped. Again, so that's my opinion. That's where I'm at, and I would like to go against the officer's decision for approval and deny this application.
Okay, well, we already have the proposal from Councillor Cartwright, which we'll take an initial vote on if there's no further comments or questions. Is that, so you've really summarised, haven't you? So we'll go straight to the vote then. So all those in favour of Councillor Cartwright's proposal? All those against? And any abstentions? No. Okay, so that's approved then. Okay, so moving on to item 10, which is the urgent business. So before we conclude, I'll hand over to Democratic Services Officer, who will advise on any upcoming business for the committee.
Thank you, Chair. We have our next meeting on the 6th of November, which will be here, and that will deal with a number of applications in the South Northamptonshire area, former South Northamptonshire area. It is also proposed to hold an additional meeting of this committee on Tuesday, the 18th of November, to deal with a number of planning applications in the Northampton area. If that is okay with everybody, that second meeting in November will be held at 1 Angel Square. And then that leaves us on to the 4th of December, which is our last ordinary meeting of 2025. So lots of additional meetings, unfortunately, but I will send out an Outlook invite to all of you tomorrow. Thank you, Chair.
The additional meeting will be chaired by Councillor Cartwright as well, so I will not be available. So I'll leave it in his hands. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Tuesday, the 18th of November. We're very, very short, unfortunately, on available dates due to other committee business, scrutiny business, etc. So Tuesday, the 18th is the only one that's currently free in the Democratic Services calendar. But I will send you all an email tomorrow and an Outlook invite, and that'll be 6 p.m. at 1 Angel Square. That is the 4th of December. That's the next ordinary meeting after that. And then obviously the 6th of November, which is our ordinary meeting in November as well. So that's the 6th of November, 18th of November and 4th of December. And that sees us through to the end of the year. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. That's it. That concludes the business for tonight. Thank you, everyone.